There's a lot of sightseeing. The public
Mhm.
transportation is phenomenal. It's very cheap. I think it takes around 300 forints for one ticket, which is 3 dirhams to get around the city. And if you're a student,
Wow.
it's even cheaper. For a month, I pay maybe 10 dirhams to get around the whole city.
Wow.
And yeah, there's a lot of sightseeing, there's a lot of walking, there's a lot of parties and festivals and art galleries, shopping. It's a really nice city, I think.
Good evening. My name is Tejas. I'm the founder of Gyanberry, and welcome to the Future Doctor podcast show. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Simran Sood from the University of Semmelweis from Hungary. Welcome, Simran.
Hi, my name is Simran and I'm a fifth year student in University of Semmelweis in Budapest, Hungary.
Awesome. I'm excited and looking forward to speaking with you, Simran.
Yeah, me too.
Amazing. So, just to give you an idea of what this podcast is about, Simran, although you have an idea, but just want to re-emphasize for everyone.
Mhm.
Future Doctor podcast is aimed at high school students who want to apply to medical universities around the world. So we want to give them hands-on information as to how to apply to medical schools, how to succeed in their application, and also how to succeed at a medical school. You know, how they can do well at the medical school and graduate and open the doors of opportunities for them, right?
Yeah,
So let's get started.
yeah, sure.
Okay, so Simran, if you could tell me about your background, where did you grow up? Where did you do your schooling?
Okay, so I am based in Ras Al Khaimah in UAE, and I did most of my high school there from 12 years to 19 years. And I was brought up in India. I was born in India, but I changed my curriculum from a CBSE to a more British curriculum. And towards my last 2 years, I was doing IB, which is the International Bachelorette. And I think around grade 10 and or 11, when most of the people are doing IGCSEs, is when I decided that I wanted to pursue medicine.
So let's talk a bit about that.
Mhm.
How did you decide that you want to take up medicine or you want to become a doctor? How did that happen?
Yeah, so my parents are doctors, based in Russell Kema, and my whole life they told me not to be a doctor and they wanted me to pursue something more creative. However, because I was brought up in such a scientific environment and all my subjects were also scientific, like biology, chemistry, and physics, I think I eventually decided that that's something I want to do in life.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if I understand correctly, you did a switch from GCSEs to IB, yeah?
I did CBSE in India,
CBSE.
and then I switched to IGCSEs. First, it was a British
Okay.
curriculum, then I did IGCSEs, and then I did IB. As you go through high school, they change the curriculum. I don't know
Hmm.
about other schools, but that's how my school did it.
Right. So how challenging was it for you to switch between
Uh,
these curriculums?
I was really young. I don't think I knew how hard it was just as yet, but of course, CBSE is way harder than IGCSEs.
Hmm.
Um, but the switch was it wasn't that bad. I didn't really notice it that much. It was actually I had a bigger advantage because I knew much more than my peers.
Right. And talk a bit about your application and the admission journey. When did you start planning for med school applications, and which all countries you were considering?
Okay, so the med school application, I think in grade 11 when because most of the universities actually in the UK they consider IGCSEs, so they look at your
Hmm.
grades. I don't think they look at anything before that. So that's when I realized that I have to give importance to these grades. But the actual application was not until the last year of my high school. So
Hmm.
for me, it was grade 13, which is because IB is 2 years. So for me, it was
Right,
grade 13 is when I started the application.
right.
Yeah.
What all countries and universities you were considering
So
at that
for
point of
me,
time?
it was pretty narrow. I did not want to go back to India. So I did want to apply to the UK. For
Hmm.
that, you have the UKMLE, which I gave when I really don't remember. It was some years ago, but I think I was 17 or
Right.
18 years old. not really
Mm-hmm.
sure, but that's the amount you can give at whatever time you want to. So UCAMLE is what I considered. So the UK was one of the options, but just as a
Hmm.
backup, I had some European countries too, like Poland and Hungary and Italy, and
Hmm.
that's yeah.
Okay, and why did you choose Europe as one of the options? Like there are so many countries. What features or benefits you came across about Europe?
So the UK, even though it has one of the most prestigious universities, it's still very, very expensive for undergraduation. And on top of that, I because of Brexit, it was just easier for me to go
Right.
to Europe. And I chose Europe because back then, not anymore, but back then Hungary was cheaper, the cheapest option.
Mm-hmm.
So because I'll be studying for a very long time, I was inclined towards not spending too much money on my undergraduation.
Right. So how much do you save as compared to UK, like studying in
A,
Europe
a
in
lot,
Hungary?
a lot. I think. Well, back then, I just throwing a number. I
Right.
remember one of the tuition fees per year or per semester was around 40,000 pounds. And
Right. Yeah.
here per semester, I don't know in pounds and euros, but it's around $8,000 or
Right.
$9,000 max. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a hell lot of a
Yeah,
difference.
it's a lot of money, yeah. But on top of that, it's not just the money, it's also the culture, because the European culture, it does promote independence. And I think I learned much more moving here alone than going to the UK because I had family there. So
Mm-hmm.
I think because of that, I do prefer the European countries.
Right. 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 And along with Hungary, which all, other countries you applied to?
I only applied to the UK after the UK MLE, but
Mm-hmm.
I got into one, but because of the really high price tag, I applied only in Hungary, but in different universities.
Okay. Do you remember the entrance requirements? How was the entire admission process for
Uh,
University of Semmelweis?
so for Semmelweis, obviously you have to give an online admission form, and then you have to have a high school diploma. I don't think they look
Hmm.
at the grades, but you do have an entrance exam, which had English, medical English, some
Right.
chemistry. Didn't I don't think it had biology, and I think it had physics, but I'm not
Hmm.
sure. It might have changed now. And we had after that we had an interview with some of the faculty.
Right.
So that's
And what tips you would give to someone who is preparing for the entrance exam, how they should go about it?
yeah. So for me, I was doing my final year in IB, and I already had chemistry and biology and everything. So you don't necessarily have to prepare for it if you already have the subjects. I just went in and I gave the exam, and the interview itself, they want to know your motivation rather than your knowledge, and they're
Hmm.
testing if you actually have a brain and you're not just reciting things. So
Hmm.
I necessarily didn't prepare. I did look at some past papers, but because I had exams coming, I just used whatever knowledge I had.
What tips or suggestions you would give to someone who is planning to give the university entrance exam now, how they should go about preparing?
So if you have the subjects already, such as chemistry, any of the sciences, especially chemistry, they put a big emphasis on chemistry. You don't really need any specific preparations. You can look online for some past papers, and that's all I did. And they also have a part with medical English, and if you're a fluent English speaker, you don't really need to prepare for that. So mostly whatever you prepare for your last year of high school exams, like I did for IB, I didn't really go in doing a lot for it because I already had chemistry and other subjects.
Right. So if they have like HL sciences or A level sciences, then that
Yeah,
should be good
yeah.
enough for
I
them
had
to.
HL, chemistry, bio, and maths, so I didn't
Right.
really need specific preparation for it. Yeah.
Right. And what would you tell someone, who is preparing for the interview? Because it doesn't matter how easy the interview is, but you always have this anticipation or sometimes even anxiety as to how, what they're going to ask, how should I tackle it?
Mm.
So what suggestions you would have for them?
So from what I remember is that he was asking very basic questions and he didn't really expect a lot of detailed answers. I think he was asking me things like what powers everything on the earth, and I started to give really complex answers, but then in the end he just wanted me to say the sun. And
Right,
so it's more to see how you can interpret a question and answer and not just vomit out whatever you've read on in a book or something. Yeah.
right.
And they're
Okay,
really
so
nice. They're really nice. Like I don't think you should be nervous because they're very nice and accommodating.
right. So what was your reaction when you got the offer letter?
It was surprising because I was not really prepared for it. I kind of just went in and gave an exam on a random afternoon, came back home, and I was preparing for my IB final. So it was a good surprise. The one thing about
Right.
this university is it is surprisingly easier, not easy, but easier to get into compared to other university.
Right, but now it's getting tougher since
It's
now you're in the
that's
fifth year.
yeah, yeah,
It's
that's what
gotten
it's
tougher.
very, very infamous for, that it's easy to get in, but it's very difficult to stay in. Yeah.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right, right. Uh, so you got the admit, you decided to, go through it with the whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Anything you remember on the visa side when applying to, for the visa, any challenges you or your parents, came across?
Um, there weren't any challenges. All the information is online. Um, what I remember from it is that we went to Abu Dhabi and we applied for the visa, and the card I only got, excuse me, the card I only got when I came to Hungary. So the only
Mm-hmm.
challenge is that the administration for the visa office here is very slow. So you have to
Hmm.
plan everything from the beginning and you need to ask a lot of people. But I don't think it wasn't difficult to get the visa because I am a student and it's easier for students to get visas.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about Hungary. What students should know about Hungary,
Yes.
from a student's perspective.
Yeah, so I was 19 when I moved here, and I've never visited Hungary before, but I think it's one of the most student friendly countries, especially Budapest as a city, because there's a lot of universities here. It's not just medicine, and they're very famous too. So a lot of people from all around the world. It doesn't feel like I left UAE. It's as culturally mixed as UAE,
Hmm.
and the city itself, the food, the culture, the entertainment, everything is very, very nice. Obviously, 4 or 5 years ago, it was a bit cheaper, but it's still cheaper than Dubai or UAE or any other Gulf area. So it's a very affordable city for students.
Could you let us know the cost of education in Hungary at your university?
Okay, so for me, it's $18,000 roughly per year. So that's
Hmm.
yeah, so $9,100 per semester.
That's for the tuition fee, yeah?
The tuition fee, yes.
And what about the living expenses?
So it really depends if you're living alone or if you're living with someone. If you're living with
Hmm.
someone, the rent itself can vary from 600 to as much as you want, and your own expenses would be the same. So 1,200 euros, 1,300 euros, up to 2,000 is a bit lavish, obviously, but
Hmm.
I think 1,200, 1,300 is quite good.
Okay, so roughly $18,000 for the tuition fees and between say 1,200 to can go up to 2,000 euros per month for
Mm.
your cost of living.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good.
Perfect. What all things are there for a student, like beyond the campus life, what
Yeah.
all you do?
So obviously the first 2 years, the campus life will consume you for a long, long time, but there's a lot of sightseeing. The public
Mhm.
transportation is phenomenal. It's very cheap. I think it takes around 300 forints for one ticket, which is 3 dirhams to get around the city. And if you're a student,
Wow,
it's even cheaper. For a month, I pay maybe 10 dirhams to get around the whole city.
wow.
And yeah, there's a lot of sightseeing, there's a lot of walking, there's a lot of parties and festivals and art galleries, shopping. It's a really nice city, I think.
In terms of your first year,
Yeah.
Tell us how, your orientation week was, how did the first year go for you as an international student without your parents? How
Mhm.
did you cope up with everything?
Um, so I wasn't so young compared to my classmates, so it wasn't as bad for me to transition to living alone. But they're very friendly in the universities, especially the seniors. They have been in your place, so they try to accommodate your needs as much as possible. Very helpful. There's also an international association here, which basically sends you emails, you sign up for it, and they take you around the campus because we don't have just one campus. We have several different locations all over Budapest, which you do have to travel to every day. Like you can have a class 15 minutes away or 20 minutes away or an hour away, but they tell you everything. So I was never lost. I was always
Mhm.
surrounded with people who knew what was happening. So it
Right.
wasn't so bad. Yeah.
And academically, how was the first year?
Well, I'll be very honest, the first 3 years are the toughest years of my life. I think
Hmm.
it really challenges you, not only mentally, but physically too. Um,
Right.
because obviously I moved from UAE and I went from hot to like really cold weather as well. So
Hmm.
academically, it was very, very challenging, and it is something I expected. But the other aspects like weather, missing family, being homesick, taking care of yourself is not what I expected.
Right. I've heard a lot of cases wherein students can't cope up, right? Like this
Mhm.
academic pressure, like they come from, say, A levels or IB, and they themselves think that, okay, A levels is too tough, IB is too tough. And then they get into med
Yeah,
school,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
like 10 times tougher to
Yeah, it
sustain.
is definitely.
So they drop out or, they change their course.
Mm,
So how did you stay on track and, pass each
mm.
year successfully? What would you
So
tell students?
the first year I was the first semester actually, 1 month in, there was an exam that I had to pass, which is
Hmm.
physics to get to biophysics. So there's a lot of prerequisites you need to pass to get to the actual subject. The
Right.
only way I kept going is I really had a good support system around me. My parents are doctors, so they understood what it is like to be in
Hmm.
medicine. And on top of that, my friends were very studious, and because I was independent, I could go to libraries, I could go to cafes. But obviously the first semester I was kind of lost. I was at home, I was studying on my own, and this is only something you will learn as the years go by. It can only be taught through experience. So the best advice for first year is just to keep going, because it will eventually get better as you're also growing up as a person. Not
Right.
only are you a student, you're also, an adult. So
When you're preparing in the first year, you're new, right? You don't know many people. You're maybe a little afraid to speak to professors beyond the classroom. And imagine you have doubts, you're not understanding something.
mm.
What do you do? What do you do in this case?
So because this program is so big, there's almost 200 to 300 students just in first year. There's a lot of people around you who are probably feeling the same. So asking each other of what they did or looking at resources online. And the professors are very, very approachable too. They will never be angry if you come to them with a doubt. Um, Obviously, yeah, I was scared in the beginning, but in the end, it's beneficial for me. So I did bring up some courage, and I went and I talked. But the best thing was to just talk to my friends and ask them, and maybe they know something better than I do. So yeah.
And some students they are a bit shy to make friendship or get acquainted with the senior students. What you have to talk about, what you have to say about that.
Mhm. So when I came, I didn't really had a goal of making any friends. I just let it happen and I made a lot of friends. So just putting pressure on yourself to make friends in the senior year would actually delay that even more. But the
Right.
seniors are also really, really nice. Like the only way of meeting them is probably through associations, or if you're Indian, there's a lot of Indian seniors too, including myself.
Hmm.
So we're always there. And also, Isa, the the association that we have for international students also has a lot of senior students, which offer
Mhm.
a lot of help. So there's always the senior within reach. You don't have to go out of your way to do that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Uh, could you talk about the diversity in the classroom, like, from which all countries students are studying in University of Semmelweis?
Uh, there's students from almost everywhere, every corner of the world. Obviously, there's a lot of people from European origin, Norwegians,
Mhm.
and French. There's a lot of Indians actually. When I first came here, there weren't that many, but there now we have a huge influx of Indians, so that
Mhm.
has increased. There's a lot of Asians, so almost every nationality is there. Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Um, Now let's talk about the Hungarian language. It's
Mm,
not one of the most popular and neither one of the easiest languages to learn, right? And then in the first 3 years, you do have Hungarian as one of the subjects
mm.
in the med school. Can you talk about that and how someone should, learn Hungarian?
So obviously the Hungarian you need to learn is more towards medical Hungarian. It's not necessarily that you need to know how to order in a cafe or anything. You just need to be able to communicate with your patient because, for example, in my clinical years, sometimes the doctors are not there, and sometimes we just need to ask basic questions like, "Are you okay?" or "Do you have a fever?" So these are the phrases that I remembered, and I made it a point that I knew. But
Mhm.
they don't, the Hungarian teachers are lovely. They're very sweet. They understand that we have 10 other subjects, so they don't really put a lot of pressure on us.
Right.
Um, I think as of now, the curriculum has changed and they're now teaching more of a medical Hungarian than they did for me. But even with me,
Mhm.
it is a very difficult language, but it is what you take from it. So the only thing you should be taking from it is at least having a conversation and able to ask medical questions from a patient.
Right. And has that helped you, outside the classroom as well when you go to cafes or, just outside?
Um, to be honest, everyone here speaks English, even
Mhm.
more so since I came here. So I didn't have the need to say it, but obviously, if you want to, you can. I am not really a language person, and Hungarian is one of the hardest languages. So I know enough to carry maybe some pleasantry saying hi, bye, thank you, how are you? But it
Right.
did help, yes, but it helped more in my clinical years.
Right. Right. Understandable.
Yeah.
Uh, Can you talk a bit about the examination pattern, like how students are assessed in the theoretical years,
Mm-mm.
and how different is it from the high school examination, pattern?
So it's completely different. I have never experienced anything like this before I came into university. It's a very hard path to navigate, and you can, again, only understand it once you go through it once or twice. So what basically happens is that in a year we have 2 semesters, and every semester has an exam season. And then the exam season, you can pick your own dates. So you have a few subjects and you can register on the date you want to. So you're making your own timetable. And that happens until the third year. So we have exam seasons until the third year. So I've had 6 exam seasons. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So what else did you ask?
Like how they examine you? Is it like
Oh,
oral exams or written exams?
so it depends on the subject. Anatomy, which is the heaviest and the biggest subject, the anatomy, microscopic, macroscopic, histology, and neurology. They're the biggest subjects and they're oral, but to get to the oral part, you do have to give a written computer exam. So it really
Mm-hmm.
just depends on the subject, but almost 80% of them are oral exams. And
80%.
yeah, almost 80. But from what I remember, I think most of the exam seasons I was giving oral exams. And the written ones, I don't think there were that many, but the ones that were there were multiple choice.
Okay, okay. And how students should tackle the oral examination, how they should pass it, how well they can prepare for it.
Yeah. So I think this is the one thing that makes Semmelweis so difficult because oral exam is completely random. It's not standardized. And this is the only negative part about this university. For example, I had a biophysics exam and we had 200 topics and they would pick maybe two or three out of the 200 topics, and then I have to just answer questions, and I have to say it's like a you're giving a presentation on the topic, but
Right.
really just depends on the examiner. And the only way to prepare for it is to, again, go through it first of all, and second of all, not to wait until the exam season to study. You have to be regular, and I'm not talking you have to sit at home every weekend for 5 6 hours. You just have to be on top of things. And second, your communication skills need to be polished. You need to be able to speak up, because there are times where you're going to encounter very unfair professors, and you just need to be able to speak up for yourself, or just speak up in general, and need to show them. You need to probably sell yourself for passing sometimes. Yeah.
And how many attempts you can give for the oral exam in case you say fail the first attempt? Is there a
So
second attempt?
yeah, so before saying that, failing is very normal in medicine in general. I had never failed in my life before, but I have failed, and it's completely normal, because it does depend on the mood of the examiner or the topic. It really doesn't represent how much you know or don't know. But you have, as far as I know now, because they always change their regulations, you can have another attempt, which is free. And then you have a third attempt that you need to pay for, but it's not that expensive. I think it was 70 dirhams or 80 dirhams. And then you have a fourth special attempt that you do have to give a good reasoning for. But that's the fourth attempt is only once for all subject, but all the three attempts you can have for every subject in the exam season.
And how are the clinical rotations? Which year does it start, and which all departments you rotate and shadow?
So we obviously are exposed to clinical years very early on. I remember the first time I went into the anatomy building, we did see a dead body right away. And Semmelweis is known to have the most dead bodies and the most
Hmm.
practical experience out of all the European countries. Even my parents
Hmm.
haven't seen as many dead bodies as I have. So that's they give you an exposure very early on. But when we actually have the block system, say like gynecology, oncology, clinical pharmacology, it's fourth year. So that's when it's
Okay,
purely clinical, and we go and we even perform some tests on the patients. We visit patients, and it's like block system, which is it's completely different from the first 3 years.
right. And how do you de-stress yourself? Especially you said the first 2 years are quite daunting.
Mm,
So how do you manage the stress levels when you're, not able to figure out things?
yeah. So the misconception I think we've learned from high school is that we need to be chained to our desk 24/7, but that does more harm than benefit. The first year I did exactly that. I was chained to my desk, and towards the end of it, I was mentally very exhausted. So the only way
Mm.
I did that is I took a lot of breaks. I would go on walk. It doesn't have to be something crazy. You can go on a walk, you can study with your friends, you can eat outside, you can study the whole day and then go at dinner at night. You don't need to restrain yourself simply because you have exams. But obviously, finding that balance is really hard, and it will take some time for you to understand it. Yeah.
Right. And now, you're living by yourself, right?
Yeah.
So do you cook? Do you order meals? How do you plan your day when it comes to food?
So when I first came in, I cooked a lot. I like to cook, so it really depends on the student. But during exam season, I was ordering most of the time. It is a bit pricey. It's also why my monthly expense is a bit higher than usual, but it's really easy to cook for yourself. You're not cooking for a family of four, so you can cook whatever you want, you can eat whenever you want. And also there's a lot of tons of cheap options outside.
Right. Uh, so are there any like apps you would recommend to students who are coming to Hungary that they should download and are,
I
very
wouldn't tell
resourceful?
I wouldn't tell them to download anything because it gets very addicting. The first year I was ordering every other day during exam
Right.
season. I would tell them to maybe try to cook for themselves and learn. And maybe when exam season comes, then download the app, because it does
Hmm.
get quite pricey and addicting, and it's not as healthy. But there's a app called Volt, which everyone uses, that they can download. Or there's, if they live in the main city center, there's so many things at a walkable distance.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you said Volt, yeah?
Yeah.
VOLT.
WOLT.
WOLT.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And with your study visa for Hungary, can you travel to other EU countries and did you take advantage of that?
Yeah, you can travel and you get very cheap prices from Hungary to any other Schengen area. So not the UK or any other Schengen borders, but you can with your student visa.
Right. So did you explore other countries? Did you get
Yeah,
time?
I've gone to the major like France, Italy, Spain, Germany, so like all of the countries around. And if you
Hmm.
have time, I did more of that in my second and third year, but
Right.
you can go even for a weekend. There's Slovenia and Bosnia,
Hmm.
maybe 2, 3 hours away from bus here.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And now you're in the senior years, right? Like you're in the fifth year now,
Yeah.
right? So what's your future plan? What are you planning to do after graduating?
So my future plan is to apply to the UK. I
Hmm.
do want to do they don't really call it residency there, but I do want to do
Hmm.
my postgrad there. And because I'm doing 6 years,
Hmm.
it's a bit detailed, but in the UK, there's foundation year one and foundation year two. And because I'm
Hmm.
doing my 6th year already, I will directly go to foundation year two.
Nice.
So yeah, but it's not really a big advantage because I would want to learn a little bit because foundation year two, you get a lot more responsibilities and
Correct.
they do expect you to know everything already. So my plan is to go to the UK, yeah. But if that doesn't
Okay.
work, I am also learning German on the side
Hmm.
so that
Hmm.
I can go to Austria or I can go to Germany or Switzerland. So I do have an
Hmm.
option A and a B.
Okay, so if you have to go from Hungary to Germany, what are the steps you have to take? What are what is the process? Are there any exams to make that transition?
I'm not sure about that because it's my plan B.
Hmm.
But for the UK, I know for a fact you have to give PLABs, or now they've changed it to the UKMLA. But again, they don't have that much information about that as yet because it
Hmm.
just implemented this year.
Right.
Germany, I for sure know you need to know at least C1 German.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if they have exams. I don't think they do, but you do have to really pursue them to get. It's not the same as the UK. You have to call a lot of hospitals and ask if I can work there. And it's
Right.
better. Yeah, it's better. It's a bit different. And I don't know much about it because it's plan B, but yeah.
Right. Right. So a lot of parents have this apprehension that, okay, if I graduate from Hungary or as a matter of fact from any European country, will my degree be recognized across the EU countries or am I tied to work only in, say, you're graduating from Hungary, so do I need to work only in Hungary? Can I go back to home country, say in India? Can I
Mm.
go to UK, US? So can you talk a bit about the accreditation and recognition of the degree from University of Semmelweis?
So as far as I know, it is accredited throughout the EU, and I think it is as well in India. But even if
Hmm.
it's not, you just give a few medical licensing exams and you can get into the country you want. That's why in
Hmm.
the UK you have foundation year one and two, and then you get into a specialty. But the
Right,
degree itself, because Semmelweis is one of the oldest universities in Hungary or like Eastern Europe, it's almost 200 years old, and I think it's ranked around 200 in the world in medicine or just in general. So it is recognized a lot of places, so it's not something you should be worried about. Yeah.
right. And what tips or suggestion you would give to somebody who is in high school right now and planning to apply to medical schools? What are the things that they should start doing that will set them up for success to get into medical schools?
So what I've noticed in UAE or in Dubai, it's a very competitive environment, which does
Hmm.
lead to a lot of stress. I remember preparing for my UK, USMLE, and I was very
Sorry,
stressed.
you mean the UCAT exam, yeah, for UK?
Yes, that one, UCAT. Sorry, it's been 4 or 5 years
Yeah, a
now.
long
But yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah, that one. I think I was very stressed, and I think that stress really got to me to achieve my full potential. So comparison is your worst enemy, and I think you should just focus on where you can get. Because when I got into the UK, I got into one of the universities, but it was very expensive and also not the course I wanted. But I
Hmm.
still ended up in Europe, and I'm still doing medicine. So it's not the end of the world if you don't get your first choice, because the second choice might be better for you. And second, with studies, obviously do as best as you can, but a lot of European countries don't require really amazing high school grades. They just need you to have a diploma. But obviously, if you're really bad at chemistry, it's gonna be bad for you later. It's gonna be detrimental for your medical studies. So really paying attention. Chemistry is like the biggest that I would say you need to pay attention in chemistry, bio as well, physics, sure if you have it. But yeah.
Right. Talk about physics, why it is important. Lot of med school student think, okay, only bio and chem is important for me, but then how much physics is relevant for med school curriculum?
So I can only speak for Semmelweis, but I didn't have physics in my last 2 years. I
Mhm.
did have maths though, so it helped. We have this course called biophysics, and I think is the most difficult subject that I've done. Obviously, there's more. It's one of the most difficult subjects I've done because I didn't have any background in physics, but the only thing that helped me was maths. So they're very brutal with the basically you have a prerequisite of doing physics first. So a month you do physics and then you have to give an exam. You have to pass the exam and then you do biophysics. And that's obviously 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe they have changed it now, but biophysics is still a subject, and having a background in physics is really important. But I didn't have physics. I only had physics in grade 10 and I still could manage. So
Right.
yeah.
And when you were in the high school, you said your parents are doctors. So that must have given you a lot of exposure as
Yeah.
to, what you are getting into. And probably that also acted as an inspiration for you, like parents being doctors. So that also, kind of passes on to the child as well. But
Mhm.
somebody, whose family is not into healthcare or, are not doctors, how they can validate, if medicine is the thing for them, what they can do in the high school to validate this.
So in the UAE, because my mom was a doctor and she was head of department, I could do a lot of observerships. But
Hmm.
there are, I think, if you go online and look for electives that you can do as a high school student, just to observe and what happens on a day-to-day basis in a hospital, maybe watching a lot of videos and seeing what a medical student's life, maybe seeing this podcast. You have to go above and beyond to really expose yourself if you don't have anyone in your family, because I did have my parents and I was exposed to it almost daily. I used to see surgeries, I used to see cases and patients, obviously not their names or who they are, but just
Right.
what they did. Yeah. So for non-medicals, I would just, if you know someone in medicine, maybe talk to them.
Mhm.
I think that's the best way. But if you don't, there's so many interviews online. I watched so many. I also prepared myself that it's gonna be a very gruesome journey. So that really helped through medical school, because a lot of people think that getting in was the hardest part, but it's not. The hardest part is to keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
And in spite of all the challenges, right, and the curriculum being so rigorous for medicine, right, what is the most satisfying part for you that keeps you going, that sort of, keeps motivating you, this is the thing, I want to do it.
So the first 3 years, if you ask me this question, I would say nothing. But after that, because we were exposed to a lot of clinical experience and I was actually using all the knowledge that I prior thought was useless, it just seeing how much you can do with the knowledge that you have gained over the few years, it's really satisfying, I think, because when you're studying it, obviously you think, why do I need to know this? But then there are days where you're gonna be happy that you spend that extra hour reading this certain thing or trying to understand it. So I think that's the most satisfying part.
Right.
Yeah.
Also want to talk to you a bit about the duration of the degree. Say Indian students, they typically know MBBS degrees, say for 5.5 years.
Hmm.
Same is in the UK as well. In the US and Canada, it's for 4 years after you do the pre-med. But
Hmm.
when they hear 6 years for
Hmm.
the European Union, they're sort of confused. Why 6 years? So can you talk, what this 6 year degree is about and why it's a little bit longer than other countries?
Uh, so technically, it is 5 years because that's the last lecture and classes you have to go through. But the
Mm-hmm.
sixth year is more of, like I said, a foundation year where you can do whatever you want. We have like this block system, and if you want to, for example, me, I want to study in the UK, so I'm going to do pediatrics in the UK for a month.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But there's also a facultative course. So it's just to give you that, okay, you're a doctor now, but you need some sort of experience. So we're putting the sixth year so that you can go out there and see what specialty you want. So there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of specialty. I don't remember specifically, but I did remember pediatrics. We have like a big block in sixth year, and I can
Mm-hmm.
apply the UK to just do a medical elective there. So it's beneficial because you are able to obviously display how much you know and what you want to do, but you're still in med school, so you don't have the same amount of responsibility as a full-blown doctor.
Right. And maybe the last question.
Yeah. Mm.
Uh, Give me 2 or 3 tips to succeed in a medical school. Like once you join, that's the start of your journey with how to succeed.
Okay. Two or three? Three?
Yeah, up to you.
Yeah, okay. The first one is to be smart with who you surround yourself with, because even if you think it doesn't influence you, it really does.
Right.
If you're around people who are very studious and take care of themselves or are in the library, but also to, go out or have fun, you will become that person because you are who your friends are. So I think that's one of the biggest tips I would give. I really saw a difference from first year compared to fourth or third year when I changed the people I was around. The second one is not to treat every exam as it's going to be the end of the world if you fail. Um, when you go through med school, you have to accept that failure is not a setback. You can grow from it. Obviously, I'm not going to say that it doesn't hurt at all, but it does hurt. Sometimes it's unfair, but this university knows that. That's why they give you so many chances and they give you 2 months of exam seasons, and they even give you an option to push your subject, and they understand that it's difficult. The third one is just, this is something you will probably learn as you grow older, to balance everything. Sitting at home and just studying over and over again is not going to help you in the long run. Maybe it will help you get through first and second year, but third year you're going to get burnt out. And that's a fact. Like you will get burnt out if you're not taking care of yourself mentally and physically. So I mean, it's harder to actually do it. It's easier to say it, but there are times where I wasn't taking care of myself. But obviously, there are times where, if again, to my first point, if my friends are also doing something, taking care of themselves, I will do it too. So yeah, that's about it.
Perfect. I think these are some amazing suggestions. And coming from you,
Mhm.
who have been through that journey,
Yeah,
so means a lot. And I think students can relate with a lot.
yeah, okay.
So, Simran, thank you so much for sharing your journey so openly
Yeah,
and giving some helpful tips and suggestions to potential students.
yeah,
And maybe some of them will see you in the university.
yeah. I hope so. I hope so.